So I'm going to show you a collection of 5 images, and I want you to try to make a connection between them. I'll give you 5 seconds. Ready? Go. So that was probably pretty difficult, and it wasn't meant to be easy. These connections took scientists decades to put together. So let's start with the kelp. This is a diagram of 2 separate surveys, one from 2008 and one from 2014 of Sonoma and Mendocino County, and it covers kelp coverage. And as you can see, there's been a significant loss of kelp from 2008 to 2014, more than 50%. And this means habitat loss, because where there's little kelp, there's little life. This is one of the predators of kelp, abalone, and on the picture on the left, it's doing something rather unusual. It's climbed to the top of the kelp stalk to feed on the fronds, and that's an abnormal eating behavior for them. This other abalone was collected from that same site, and you'll see that the meat of it is kind of shrunken in. Really, it should cover the outside of the shell, and what this tells us is that it's starving. This is another foe of the forest, sea urchins. Sea urchins, along with other kelp predators, have been eating away at the kelp, creating huge regions of empty space called dead zones. And these dead zones are becoming so numerous that all of the kelp predators are starving. And their numbers before were increasing and now are dropping off. The California sea otter are the natural predators of these shellfish, and they were placed on the endangered species list in the 70s because in the early 1900s, they were brought to the brink of extinction because of fur trapping. And despite being added to this list, their numbers have not improved. So what's hindering their improvement? Allow me to introduce you to this parasite, Toxoplasma gondii, or T. gondii for short. T. gondii's primary host is cats, and when a cat becomes infected, it sheds hundreds of thousands of parasitic eggs called oocytes. And these oocytes contain hundreds of thousands of the parasite within, and they're extremely durable and make their way into the ocean via runoff and improper waste disposal. Upon entering the ocean, they come into contact with the kelp's biofilms and attach themselves there, and are eaten by shellfish, which are then eaten by otters. The otters then contract toxoplasmosis, which is the disease caused by T. gondii. This creates encephalitis, which is inflammation of the brain, and leads to seizures and death. If there are pregnant otters, the fetuses will be spontaneously aborted because they too can contract toxoplasmosis. Toxoplasma gondii can be killed at 165 degrees Fahrenheit over a 10-minute period, so my lab was centered around this idea. Those 2 boxes are simulated litter boxes, and they're being immersed in a hot water bath of about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. The idea here is that the heat would permeate through the litter boxes and the litter into the fecal matter, killing the parasite and any other pathogens, eliminating their threat before they have a chance to spread. These are the results from that first trial. On the left is the control, in the middle is a 30-second heat exposure sample, and on the right is a 16-minute heat exposure sample. And as you can see, there's very little difference between the two, indicating that they need a greater exposure time to heat, a greater temperature, or both. In order for sea otters to be removed from the endangered species list, they must achieve a population size of 3,090 or greater. And if the litter box were implemented nationwide, they would achieve this number within the first year. As for the additional 3 years, over that time, the population would grow to this number. You might remember earlier in my connection slide a picture of a pregnant woman, and that's because pregnant women can also contract toxoplasmosis like otters. And when this happens, there can be spontaneous abortion, but more commonly, there's damage to the brain and spinal cord. And this is the number of cases. There's 4,000 cases contracted every year. So in that 3-year span of using this heated litter box, this is the number of infants that will be spared from that disease. So using this project and implementing this litter box across the nation will increase biodiversity by replenishing kelp forests and save many lives, thousands of them, both human and animal. Thank you.